He walks out the door and he stops once he gets outside. He turns around and he looks at me, smiled, kind of did a little wave, and then turned into a coyote.
Welcome to Bigfoot Society. In this episode, we welcome back Alex from episode 242, this time to talk about his many Skinwalker encounters over the years. And he also shares a harrowing encounter with a Sasquatch in Glacier National Park in Montana. What effect have these encounters had on Alex over the years, and what connection did we figure out that ties his Skinwalker encounters to his time in Klawock, Alaska? Find out this and more on this episode of Bigfoot Society. All right, Bigfoot Society, we got the privilege of talking to Alex again. You may remember him from a few episodes back. We had talked to him about his time as a retired Salvation Army pastor up in Southeast Alaska. And the response to that episode was absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, it ended up going crazy viral on TikTok and a few other places, and people really enjoyed that discussion. But Alex had reached out to me and again, and he had said, I've got some thoughts for you regarding skinwalkers, which should be an interesting discussion, and it does relate to Sasquatch as well a little bit too. But Alex, how's it going today?
Good, very good. Thank you for asking.
What reminded you of the Skinwalker stories? Was it a random thought in your head, or was there something that came up that was like, I got to talk to Jeremiah about this?
You remember the last time we spoke, I believe I messaged you through TikTok, and I talked to you about Brenda Harris of the New Mexico Shadow Seekers?
Yes.
Okay. And you told me that you'd interviewed her a while ago. I got to thinking about it, and sharing Skinwalker stuff is really difficult for me because of the fact that so many people take that as crazy talk, more so than Bigfoot. And it can get into areas that are a little weird.
Why do you think it's taken as crazy talk, Alex?
Well, I met people in academia. My wife is a nurse, and I met a lot of people who were in academia through that. And they take a rather dim view of people saying things like Bigfoot's an interdimensional traveler or a UFO not or things like that. And if you try to talk to them about skinwalkers, most scientists that I've spoken to, not all, there are some who are faith-based and they may have different takes on things, but the standard everyday run-of-the-mill scientist types are people who are evidence-based and fact-based. They're not based, they don't take personal accounts as something to be taken as credible. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Eyewitness testimony to them is just what it is, eyewitness testimony. And it's always viewed as highly suspect, and it's usually not taken seriously by scientists. And one of the things that I've actually talked to people about who are a lot of my mother's, not my mother, I mean my father's side of the family are in the sciences. Like I have an uncle who's like a nuclear physicist. You know what I mean? And he is all about physics. He's all about science. He's all about facts, logic, reason, all of that. God, spirituality, all of that means nothing to him or his colleagues that I've actually spoken to. You can talk to him about that stuff, but he'll roll his eyes and look at you like you just, started, talking in tongues or something. You might as well be babbling. It means nothing to him.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of his colleagues feel the same way. And so the other reason I brought this up, too, is because there's a lot of people out there who are always pushing the Bigfoot is a, UFO, not an interdimensional traveler, a spirit. And I've known people who are very well intentioned. They may have seen something, absolutely, and I take that as credible. I've met people who I believe every bit that they saw what they saw. But what I'm trying to explain is when they throw that stuff out there, the mainstream scientists do not take that credibly. They immediately roll their eyes and disregard everything that they say. And when you're trying to understand Bigfoot, you have to understand that even if scientists do take a look at Bigfoot, that if you tell them that it's a UFO, not an interdimensional traveler, that it can cloak, that it can do all these things, unless you have specific fact-based evidence to back that up. And I'm not talking videos or personal accounts. I'm talking about you would have to summon this thing in front of a scientist, let him see it, interview it, and understand it, and record it, and do all of that for him or her to believe it. And so when people throw that stuff out there, it's unhelpful when we're trying to prove things like Bigfoot. Yeah, I know in our own culture, in Yupik culture on my father's side, our elders taught us that hairy man was a fully biological being, that he eats, lives, breathes, has children, gets old, and dies just like the rest of us. And Amakuk, which are the shapeshifters, they're totally different. They've never been physical. And when I say physical, I don't mean that they can't take on a physical form. I mean that they have never been human, Bigfoot, or anything else, although they can take on physical form. So when we confuse the two and then say Bigfoot's a interdimensional traveler, for instance, scientists, as I said just now, will roll their eyes and be like, that's a load of crap. I'm not even looking into Bigfoot. And that's why we have such a hard time getting any scientists to look seriously at Bigfoot, because of stuff like that.
Gotcha. So to recap a little bit, so the term for Bigfoot or Sasquatch would be hairy man. The term for Skinwalker would be Amakuk. Is that correct?
In Yupik, yes.
In Yupik, okay.
In different cultures, they have different names for them.
And there's going to be a few people that remember you from the Alaska episode, but what we're going to be talking about this time is not taking place in Southeast Alaska. What would be the geographic region that this would be more taking place in?
The first one was in Littleton, Colorado. The second was on my way back from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Farmington, New Mexico. And the third one took place when we were driving back from Arizona. The second one took place when we were driving back from Arizona. The third one took place when I was driving back from Albuquerque to Farmington.
Perfect. So totally different geographic. And did this take place before your time in Klawock, or was this afterwards, or a mixture?
It's a mixture.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, I'd be very interested to see, and I also think it's important to reinstate that we're not discrediting these stories that we might hear about, Bigfoot and UFOs, like you hear from Chestnut Ridge in Pennsylvania. But your main point is, if we're going to get mainstream science to play nice with the Sasquatch and, be able to prove that, we have to be careful what we are sending their way. Curious to hear what you have to share, Alex. So feel free to go right ahead.
Okay. The first incident that I had with what I believe to be a skinwalker was in 2002. I was living in Littleton, Colorado at the time. I worked at a Diamond Shamrock gas station, which I believe it's now a Valero, if it's even still in business, but I know it had converted to Valero Energy Corporation sometime after I had gone on to work for a different company. And it's a really weird night. It was a full moon outside. It was about 9:00 at night. I hadn't really had any customers coming in, and so I was kind of doing my cleanup at the end of the night. You get everything ready. You take down your machines that have like drinks and stuff like that. You clean them, you sweep them off the floor. You do all that. So I'm in the middle of that, and I'm kind of focused on that. And then I hear the door ding, because when you open the door there, it had a little bell that went off, so we'd know when people were in the building. And so I look up, I come up front, and I get behind the register, and I'm looking, and I see this Native American man, probably, I would say about 5'8", 5'9", maybe 140, 130 pounds, kind of an elder. I can't really estimate what his age would be exactly, but he came in, and he just kind of came up to the counter, and he looked at me, and he says, well, he said, I need some loose leaf tobacco. And I'm like, okay, what kind do you want? And so he pointed out one of the kinds on the shelf that we had behind me, where we kept our cigarettes, loose leaf tobacco, and chew on a shelf that was behind us, so people could see what they wanted. And so I brought it up to the counter. I rang it up, and he was like, I was like, that'll be like, I think it was like $3.89 at the time. And he was like, well, I don't have any money. I'm like, okay. And he's like, can you help me out? And I'm like, okay, sure. And so I did. I rang it up for him. I paid for it, and I gave it to him. As God is my witness, he walks out the door, and he stops once he gets outside. He turns around and he looks at me, smiled, kind of did a little wave, and then turned into a coyote. I don't mean that like I turned my eyes, I turned back, and a coyote ran up to the door. I was looking at him the entire time. I did not take my eyes off of him. Number one, because the guy scared the crap out of me. He radiated evil spiritual power that I really just can't explain. And so he just morphed. That's the only way I can say it, because he shrunk down. He almost looked like a shadow, sort of, for a second, and then he morphed, and then he reappeared as a coyote, standing where the man was standing. And he kind of let out a little yip, and then turned around and ran off. That scared the crap out of me. And so I had a friend who was Navajo, and I asked him about it a few days later. And he told me he felt also that was a skinwalker. And he said that, I'm going to tell you what he said. I'm not Navajo. I do not speak for the Navajo. I'm not in any way connected to the Navajo. I'm just going to tell you what the man told me. You can take that, believe it, or dispute it, but you would have to really dispute it with him. I can only tell you what he told me. He said that skinwalkers are people who make evil bargains with power, spiritual power, and then they gain the ability to shapeshift or summon evil spirits to shapeshift and do things for them. And he said that's what he thought it was. And he said these people can literally change shape at will. And he said they can also summon spirits to do things for them. Again, I don't fully understand it. I may be explaining it wrong. Any errors that I make in explaining it are mine, probably, because he laid a whole mess of concepts on me that I really and truly do not understand. I come from a Judeo-Christian background and all that. I had no experience with that. But everything he told me lined up with the experience I had. So we both concluded that was a skinwalker. Whether it was or not, I don't know. I can only tell you what it did, what I saw, and how I felt about it.
Man, I got some questions for you, Alex, about that. That's incredible. How do you said yourself you've got that Judeo-Christian background. What do you line that up with in your worldview then? Like, how does that make sense to you? What you saw, I'm curious.
Other. I believe that the Bible doesn't explain everything. I'm not saying that the Bible's wrong or in any way incorrect, so I don't want to get the Christians after me and start having them trip out on me and lose their minds. I'm not saying anything like that. What I'm saying is not everything is in the Bible. The reason I say that is I saw Bigfoot. Now, there are giants mentioned in the Bible, the Nephilim, but this is just my understanding. They all perished in Noah's flood. Now, there were giants mentioned afterward in the Bible, which were also called Nephilim, like Goliath, like the Anakim, the sons of Anak, or Anak, I should say. They are mentioned in the Bible as giants, but these were people. They were not large, hairy people that, lived wild in the forest and did weird things. They were people. They could propagate, they could have children, and the children weren't hairy monsters. So I think that we should not confuse the two. So I just think that these things are outside of the realm of Christianity and what it can explain with whatever history and whatever knowledge we've gained through that. And so when I look into that stuff and I look at it, I just figure we don't know everything. We don't know what's really out there. We can only see what we see and try to make sense of it as best we can, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. When the gentleman turned from himself to, you said, a darkish cloud and then to a coyote, was it a normal sized coyote? Like, if you had seen this coyote on the side of the road, you wouldn't have taken a second look. It's just a normal looking coyote.
Absolutely normal. I mean, if you saw this thing running around, you would not know it wasn't a normal coyote. It looked like a real coyote. It wasn't overly large or overly small. Coyotes themselves are fairly small unless they're like interbred with another species of dog or wolf or some other kind of canine to make them larger, but they generally are fairly small. And that's about what he was. He was about the size of a small dog. And by small, I don't mean like Chihuahua or a Corgi or something like that. Actually, I'd probably say like a medium-sized dog, maybe.
Sure.
Kind of like an Australian Shepherd, about that size. That's about how big he was. But he had the coat of a coyote. It was kind of a tannish, brownish coat. And he had weird yellow eyes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they kind of had a little bit of a glow to them. Now, if you saw his eyes, that's the thing that the Navajo told me. They said that they always have glowing eyes. They described them as red eyes, but the glowing eyes I saw were kind of maybe yellow or orange, maybe. He turned and ran off. When he came in, his eyes didn't glow. There was one weird thing, which I forgot to mention to you. He did not appear on the video camera at all.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. Yeah.
He did not appear on the video camera at all. I looked for him and it looked like I was talking to somebody who wasn't there. My manager didn't believe me.
So there was video camera footage of you talking to something that wasn't there, taking the loose leaf tobacco off the shelf. And I mean, that's incredible, man.
And no, it's not still out there. So if anybody wants to go find it, good luck. I don't even think that place is still in business. I don't even think. Oh,
yeah, the footage. That's not going to happen, guys.
So don't call Jeremiah and ask him where's the video to prove it. I don't have it.
Yeah.
Just tell him the truth. If people want to believe what I say, that's fine. If they want to disbelieve it, that's also fine. I don't care. I'm not here to prove anything.
What would have happened, do you think, if you had refused the gentleman the free loose leaf tobacco?
I think he would have cursed me, is what I think. And I think I would have had a skinwalker come into my house to terrorize and or kill me. The Navajo gentleman I spoke to, he was kind of one of their medicine men. He said that skinwalkers are nothing to play around with. He said if you offend them, they'll send evil spirits to haunt you, and that's their bargain with the whatever their evil power is. However you want to interpret that, as Satan, as, some other god or goddess, I don't know. I know in Hinduism they have Kali, the goddess of death and rebirth.
Did you have trouble getting to sleep after that encounter?
I did not sleep for a week after that properly. I had nightmares about it. I kept seeing the eyes on that thing, the glowing eyes. I kept seeing that in my dreams. Sometimes, I don't know. Oh, I don't even know if I should tell you this. Sometimes I could see weird glowing eyes looking in my window. I know you probably think I'm nuts as hell, and probably your listeners would too. But I swear to you, when my house was on the third floor, and I saw glowing eyes looking in my window. What that is or was, I don't know, but it was the same type of eyes that coyote had. And all I can tell you is I thank God every day that I just gave him the tobacco and didn't give him any fuss.
Sometimes you just got that feeling, and you just know that what you need to do in a certain situation. And I think you know what I'm talking about. And glad that you listened to that for sure. And after 4 years of doing this, I don't discount anything anymore, so don't worry about it.
One thing I will tell you about Navajo is unless you really know them, they don't really share a lot of information with you. And that's not all Navajos, but on their most sacred stuff, they don't really talk about it. He told me about the Skinwalker because I had seen one and he believed I saw one. And he told me some things to protect myself and to, ward that off to make sure it didn't come around me.
Why do you think he believed that you saw one?
He said it was in my eyes.
Oh.
That was literally what he said. I can't give you any other explanation. He said, when somebody lies to me, I can see it in their eyes. He said the stuff that I told him isn't stuff that some random dude could make up unless he'd actually seen something.
When you experienced this Skinwalker encounter in Littleton, did you feel a certain way at all when it was happening? Apprehensive, scared, confused?
Scared.
Yeah.
He radiated evil energy. Have you ever seen movies like The Exorcist and stuff like that?
More or less.
Those are basically comedies to me. They're not real or based in reality, but real possessions and exorcisms are nothing like they are on that movie. And I've talked to enough people to know that is true. Have you ever met somebody that you just didn't like for some reason? You can't put your finger on it. You don't know why. They may not have done anything or said anything. They may look like really nice people on the outside, but you instinctively and instantly don't trust them. Have you ever felt somebody like that?
Before you even saw the person, looked at them in the face, you knew?
What I'm saying is, as soon as I saw him, that I felt he had evil intent.
Okay. I have experienced something like that. It's a very weird experience. It's hard to explain.
Well, it's like one of my aunties. She was hitchhiking from Oregon to Washington, and she actually encountered the Green River Killer. That I think his name was Gary Ridgway or something like that. she actually met that guy and got away from him. And it's like, when she saw him get arrested on TV, she was like, "That's the guy. That's him. That's the guy who tried to get me." And I was like, "Oh shit." I'm sorry. I didn't mean to curse.
Oh, you're good.
Sorry.
No, don't worry about it. So it was like a Ted Bundy type dude that she ran into?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Basically.
Damn. Glad she got out of that situation for real.
But the way that she described how she felt when she saw him is the same way that I felt when I saw this man, that I just instinctively knew there was something wrong with him. You know what I mean? It's almost like it's really hard to explain, other than the fact that you just know that they are not right. Something about them is off. I don't know.
Very interesting. And it almost activates a fight or flight response. Maybe, I don't know. It did for me. In my situation, I was ready to take the dude out, but that's all I'm going to say about that one.
Fair enough.
That was a long time ago.
I hear you. I didn't want to mess with this guy because he represented to me something that I felt in my, I guess you could say, my soul. I just wanted to leave this guy alone and get him out the door as quick as I could, and say it like that. And I had no intention of trying to fight with that guy. He did not look like somebody you would want to try that with. Even though he was an elder and a little guy, I can tell you that I've had enough fights to tell you that I've gotten my butt whooped by smaller guys many times. Some of the worst butt whoopings I've ever got were from guys who were probably 5'6", 5'5", maybe 130, 140, kind of. So I just instinctively knew, leave this guy alone.
Absolutely.
That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with a gentleman that can turn into a coyote.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, that one, I still sometimes, like if I'm on watching TV or something, and somebody mentions that Skinwalker or something like that on a paranormal show or something, I still kind of hark back to that. It's still, I can't fully wrap my mind around it. I know what I saw. I know what I experienced. I know how it felt, but I still can't understand where to place a Skinwalker in my world. All I can say is I'll just leave it alone. And as long as they don't mess with me, I won't mess with them.
Sure. I've got a weird question that just came into my mind. In your culture, have there ever been situations where the hairy man and the Amacook have actually interacted?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yes.
Is that anything you can share?
No.
Okay, fair enough. I was just, yep, no problem. We'll leave it at that. Would you be able to share your second story, Alex?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh. The second one was just weird. Real weird. Almost not quite as weird as me talking to the guy who turned into a coyote, but it was still weird. It might have been less weird because we were driving than it was seeing this guy physically in the store and being like 2 feet away from him. You know, so anyway, we're coming back from Arizona. We went down to Phoenix. I have medical issues. I'm on oxygen and other stuff, and we'd gone down to Phoenix to see a specialist. And so we were driving back home. It had gotten late because we'd stayed afterward. We did some shopping and we did some other stuff in Albuquerque. Or not in Albuquerque, in Phoenix, excuse me. And we're driving along on this lonely stretch of highway in the Navajo Nation. And I'm driving down the road, and I see this guy standing on the side of the road. I can only say that he looked like he was dressed in the army, but he had no face. He was standing up, but I did not see a face when I went by. And I was just like, and I asked my wife, I was like, did you see that? She was like, no, I didn't see nothing. And I was like, come on, you're not playing with me, right? She's like, no, I didn't see anything. And so as we passed it, it morphed from a guy in army dress. And I don't mean Salvation Army. I mean like U.S. Army. He had on like camos, camouflage, that stuff they wear. I don't know what all that crap is. I was never in the military, so I don't know anything about that. I know that some people have referred to them as possibly BDUs, whatever that means. That's what it looked like to me. And he had no face. And then as we passed him, he turned into a shadow and disappeared. Again, I talked to a Yeviche, a Navajo holy person, and the Yeviche said that they thought, again, it was a Skinwalker. I don't believe it was the same one I saw years ago, but you never know.
That is very interesting as well. You said it turned into like a darkness or a shadow.
Yes.
Is it similar to the same way that the first gentleman in Littleton turned into a shadowy darkness before turning into a coyote, or was it different?
It was similar but different. Because when it turned into a shadow, it just faded out. Instead of morphing into something physical like a coyote or a bird or whatever, it just turned into like almost like if you take a shadow and you like put a light on it, it just kind of disappears, you know? It was kind of like that, but there was no light on it. And it was just, there was no light coming from it or anything like that. It just became one with the darkness outside. I don't know how to put that. And then I couldn't see anything.
And you saw this happen like in your rear view mirror, it sounded like, or?
As I was passing.
Okay.
Sure. I had slowed down because I thought it was weird that a guy was standing out on the side of the road. And I thought maybe they needed help. But when I saw the guy had no face, F that. I'm out of there. I don't give a crap about nothing. You know, you look out there and you see a guy standing there who has no face. Unless you're crazy, I'm not about that life. Not about that life. I don't mess with that crap. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a devil slayer or any of that crap.
Yeah.
I was out of there, buddy. I wasn't having none of that.
Could you see? So I'm imagining, you know, you've got a figure in fatigues or BDU, no face. Was there still something in the area of the head, or was it just like
the hat?
Really?
It had on a military hat. You know, like in the Army, they have those camouflage, the hats they wear. Don't ask me to explain what it is. I'm not, again, I was never in the military. You'd probably have to have a military person comment on their uniforms.
Right.
And it might not have even been any type of military. I'm just saying that when I've seen soldiers like in different places, that's what they look like. So I don't know.
You know, I could almost explain away the no face thing, but it's the disappearing thing that really gets me, Alex. That's just the part where it'd be hard to explain that away, you know. That's very, very interesting. Are you very familiar with that area, or just area you go randomly to for your medical procedures?
I didn't go that way again.
Okay.
I'll be honest. I made sure to avoid that area.
Yeah, sure.
Not a fool. I'm not the type of guy who's going to go back and mess with something like that. Bigfoot, maybe I might go back to places I visited, but ghosts, spirits, demons, that crap, not about that life. Yeah. I don't mess with that. Nope.
Wow.
I'll put some mountain ash around my property, some salt, and some other stuff.
Right.
And, that's supposed to keep them up because they can't cross a line of mountain ash, I guess, according to the Navajo that I've spoken to.
Sure.
And I know from my own religious training that blessed salt can keep out spirits. So whether that works or not, I don't know. I can only tell you what I did. If somebody tells me to do something, they says it'll keep stuff like that away, I'm all about that life.
Sure.
If it keeps ghost, weirdness, and high strangeness out, I'm with that.
Did anything that you've experienced in these Skinwalker stories, were there, sometimes in our lives, there'll be weird connections where something will happen to me at a certain point in life, and then later on, there'll be a weird connection that comes from it. Was there anything that happened out of these Skinwalker encounters that affected your stay in Klawock, just southeast Alaska at all? Any weird connections that came up?
Yeah. Kinda.
Okay.
The thing that connects all of that is like that the legend in the Tlingit culture of the Kushtaka, because I heard a lot of stories about those. Now, I didn't see one on Prince of Wales, thank God, because I'm telling you right now, if I saw something like that, I'm out of there. I don't give a crap about nothing. I quit. I'm done. I'm leaving. Not about that life. But when they talked about Kushtaka and stuff like that, everything that they said rang true with what the Navajos teach. And then I found out later that Navajos and Tlingits are related because they're Athabascans. So that's a weird connection right there. I never really thought about that. That is a really good question, Jeremiah. I never really thought about that. The connection is all the time I saw a Skinwalker, I knew someone who was Navajo, Zuni, Hopi, whatever. But the only common denominator is Navajos. And the Tlingits are related to the Navajos through the Athabascans. I never thought about that. I never made that connection until you just said, wow. See, you just taught me something. That's why I told you after our first interview that your thoughtful and insightful questions made me think about things.
Well,
I never made that connection. The connection was that Navajo and Tlingits are related.
That's awesome. I'm glad I could help like that. That's crazy.
I never made that connection, Jeremiah. I promise you, in my mind, that just didn't click until you just asked me that question and then asked me about Klawock. I never thought about that because they actually did tell me, the Tlingits and Navajos both told me that they're relatives. And I know that when the Navajos speak and they say certain words, it sounds like Tlingit. And when Tlingits talk, or when I had a friend who was Tlingit who used to go to New Mexico because her son had married a Navajo woman. And she went down there and she said, I can understand about a quarter to half of what they were saying to me because she said it's a lot like Tlingit. And I've had Navajos say that they can, kind of understand where the Tlingits are. That's so weird. I never thought about that, man. That is absolutely crazy that
Awesome.
I never made that connection.
There you
I'm
go.
sorry. I don't mean to go on about it. That just literally blows my mind.
Oh, you're good.
That's how it's connected. That might be why I came to the Clinkets, to try to understand what happened. Oh my God.
Dude.
Nature, God, spirituality, all of that is so freaking weird. I am literally mind blown right now, dude. I can't even think.
Well, it's all connected somehow, right? And you just got to find the weird little threads that connect it. So I'm glad I could help you connect some stuff. Yeah, no problem, man.
Thank you. If you hadn't asked me that, I never would have made that connection.
There you go.
Wow. I could have had a V8.
So, Alex.
I'm joking. That's an old school joke.
I actually get that joke. I'm old enough to get it, unfortunately. So we've talked about 2 out of 3. There's also a third experience that happened as well. Would you be able to share that?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I was coming back from Albuquerque again for medical stuff. Farmington has medical and stuff like that, but they don't have a lot of specialists. I have secondary pulmonary hypertension, and that basically is high blood pressure in my lungs, and I have to be on oxygen because of that 24/7, 6 liters, 5 to 6 liters, 24/7. And so I had to go down to Albuquerque to see a specialist who specialized in pulmonary hypertension, so they could treat me for it. And, I had to go down there, and they were adjusting my sleep apnea machine and stuff like that when I went down there. And they got me a better mask and stuff like that. And so anyway, we stayed down, or not we, I should say I, because my wife wasn't with me. She had to work, so she had to stay home. We were coming home. It's probably about 8 o'clock, or I was coming home. I don't know why I keep saying we. That's so goofy. I'm sorry. Maybe because I'm still mind blown by what you told me. I'm sorry, dude. I'm still tripping on that. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm going home, and I'm going up the highway. The reason I think I'm saying we're is because when I get off this phone, buddy, I'm telling my wife what you helped me to realize, because that literally is going to freak her out. Anyway, so I'm going home. I'm about halfway from Albuquerque to Farmington, and again, I'm passing through the Navajo Nation, and I see on the right side of the road a huge freaking dire wolf. If you've ever seen in school books like a artist's rendition of what a dire wolf might have looked like, that's what I saw. That thing was freaking huge. I'm doing about 70 miles an hour, and that thing is running faster than my car. And I'm driving by it. I can see its back. I can see its legs. This thing, it was all black, hairy. The hair was black. It's running along. I can see it in my headlights, but it doesn't cast a shadow. That's what I thought was weird, is if you put a light on something and it is biological, it will have a shadow. That did not have a shadow. And it's running parallel to me and then ahead of me. And I'm just kind of freaked out. Just like tripping. And then it turns into like what looked like almost like a bat, but it wasn't like a bat, you know what I mean? Like a real biological bat. Like it had the outline of a bat and the head of a bat, but it was huge. And then it flew off over the hilltop and I lost sight of it.
That's pretty intense. When it was running parallel to you, how high up on the car would you say the creature's head would be? Like, how high off the ground did this thing get, do you think?
If I were to guess, my car, and I only know this because we've measured it, is 5 feet. And I shouldn't say 5 feet. If you take let me think about this. Okay, my car would probably be about 5.5, 6 feet, I think. This thing was taller than my vehicle.
Wow.
That would probably put it in the 7 to 8 foot range. Again, it was massive, and it looked just like the drawings I'd seen of dire wolves. I watched a show about them years ago, and it was like it was talking about, like, ancient creatures like the woolly mammoth, dire wolves, dire bears, short-faced bears, whatever you call them. It was talking about all that, and they did an artist's rendition of what a dire wolf would look like based on the skeleton. It looked exactly like the drawing I saw. What the hell that would be doing and why it turned into a bat, the only thing I can explain is it was a skinwalker. Again, I asked a Navajo holy person about it, and they also agreed that it was most likely a skinwalker, because they said if it turned into a bat and stuff like that and flew off, that's a skinwalker. That's a shapeshifter. So, again, I can only tell you what I saw. I can't tell you what the hell it was.
Oh, sure. Was it running on all fours or on 2 legs?
Yes.
Okay.
No, it was running on all fours.
Okay. Wow. How large or how wide would you say, if you could say wingspan, how big a wingspan did this bat type creature have once it turned into a bat? Any idea?
I'd have to guesstimate, and this is only a guess. I would say 20 feet.
Man.
And I've talked to Navajos about it, and a skinwalker isn't limited on how big it can get. I'm told they can be the size of a microbe, or they can be like gigantic stature. That they're not limited like we are. But I would have to say it was at least 20 feet. That thing was freaking huge.
And not limited to any specific creature, it sounds like, either.
Right.
Hmm.
From what I've understood from different tribes, and the Amacook I know in Yupik can turn into anything. They can literally turn into anything.
Fascinating.
Indeed.
I think it was very important to share these encounters, and then for people to realize, was there ever a point where there were any, have you seen any like floating orbs or anything like that involved? Yeah.
Yes. The second one, the guy I saw, the one who looked like he was in the army, when he disappeared, some orbs appeared in the area where he was as I passed by, and then flew off. I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me.
No problem.
I'm not trying to be bad. It's just sometimes when you talk about this stuff, you forget little details.
Absolutely.
Unless someone brings it back. But yeah, no, I did see orbs with that.
I just, when you had sent me over an outline of your encounters, I just was like, man, that's a very interesting detail, because that's a detail that you hear a lot of people bring up in Bigfoot sightings, where there's usually orbs involved in some way. And that's just very, very interesting. How big would you say those orbs are that you saw?
About the size of a fist.
Okay. Any particular color?
They were all colors, like all the colors, literally all the colors.
Really interesting. Wow. They disappeared, and then just a few, maybe 2 or 3, or is there a whole bunch of them floating around?
There was, I don't know, I'd have to guess about 20, maybe 30. There was a bunch of them. And it wasn't fireflies or anything like that, if somebody wants to try to explain that away as a firefly. Fireflies aren't as big as my fist, at least not that I've heard.
That's a good point. I could see someone bringing that up, but I mean, yeah, fireflies, if they're getting that big, then we've got other issues. When we had started our first interview, you had mentioned a little bit about there are some Bigfoot sightings in Montana or Bigfoot encounters. Is that anything that you can share?
I spoke to a gentleman. He was what I was doing was I was listening to my friend Miguel. He runs the Sasquatch Theory on YouTube page.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
I was listening to that, and I had my car window down because it was hot outside. And this guy heard that, and he was like, "Do you believe in that kind of stuff?" I said, "Yeah." He was like, he thought about it for a second, and he was like, I could tell he was mulling over in his head, should he tell me about it? And he was like, well, he said, I might think they're real too. And I said, okay, why? And he said that he was out at Glacier National Park in Montana. And he said that he was out there doing some hiking. And he said he encountered what looked like a gigantic black gorilla, is how he described it. He said it had a face like a gorilla. He said it had like dark skin. He said its eyes were black and kind of almond shaped. And he said that it was probably about 7.5 feet tall. And he said it was probably about 3 to 4 feet at the shoulders. And he said it was massive. And he said its muscles were really thick and heavy. The one detail he gave me, which I really thought was weird, he said that the jaw on it was askew. And I said, what do you mean? He said it looked like it had been damaged somehow and not healed properly. And I was like, that's kind of an odd detail for somebody to make up. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you hear a random dude saying this or that, and you're like, But when I looked this guy in the eye, he did not look like he was lying to me. If he was lying, I think the guy should be in Hollywood. And some of his weird details about it were, I mean, you're telling me you saw a Bigfoot, and then you tell me its jaw is askew, like it's hanging a little bit to the side. He said the mouth was closed, but he said that the jaw was out of place. And I said, did it look like a recent injury, an older injury? He said, no, it was an older injury. It looked like it had healed up, but he said the jaw was out of place. And I was sitting there thinking, Jesus, what could make the jaw of a Bigfoot break like that?
Yeah. Maybe a bigger Bigfoot. Who knows?
Maybe. I don't know. But he said that he thought that was really weird, he said. And he said it was really thick and muscled. And he said it scared him so bad he pooped himself, is what he said. And that's not a detail somebody would share if that didn't really happen to them. Because that's really embarrassing. I mean, if you defecate or urinate on yourself after you see a Bigfoot, you're not going to go telling people a detail like that unless you're like a masochist or something, because you know people are going to be talking garbage about you. But he just right out with it. And I was like, that's crazy. But he said it was all black, the hair, and he said the skin he could see on the face. He said the ears were really small and kind of weirdly shaped. And he just said that the eyes were black and were almond shaped. And he said it had a domed head like a mountain is how he described it. And he just came out with it. I said, have you ever told anybody that? He said, no. He said, because I don't want people thinking I'm crazy. I said, I looked at him and I was like, I totally feel you. And then I told him about my childhood Bigfoot experience. And he was like, that's crazy. You saw an albino? I was like, yeah. He goes, I think if I would have saw an albino, I might have just had a heart attack or a stroke. I was like, I don't know if I saw a gigantic Bigfoot and it was in the forest somewhere and it was right, like a few feet away from me and I had no protection and nothing between me and it. I said, I might have gave up the ghost. So, it's just, that was weird. And then I've heard other stories, but they were all, just secondhand stuff. And I don't like sharing that because that's not, to me, reliable. Because if you take people and sit them in a circle and you tell the story here, by the time it gets back to you, it's totally different. So when it's secondhand stuff, I don't take that as necessarily credible unless I'm able to interview the person that it directly happened to, see their face, see their reactions, and see if I think they're being truthful or not.
And it sounds like, did that gentleman's face, were you able to look into his eyes when he was telling the story?
He started crying.
Wow.
Yeah. Whatever he saw, it scared him so bad that even he said he saw it in like 1997. He said, even now, he said, I can't go in the woods. I can't hunt. I can't hike. I can't fish. He said, seeing that thing messed him up bad. He said that, like if he's driving near a forest or something, he says he has panic attacks. And he said after he saw it, it made him sick after that. And that's the one thing I forgot to tell you. That third one I saw that turned into a bat, after I saw that, I was sick for like a week.
That's right.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Again, weird connection.
There you go. And going back to that third encounter of the first, thank you for sharing that story that gentleman shared with you. That was amazing. Your third encounter, so what kind of sickness were you dealing with after you experienced the dire wolf bat creature?
I had fever. I was coughing, and I felt completely drained of energy. How can I not remember that stuff? I must have been really thrown off by that question you told me. I am so sorry.
No problem.
I apologize. That really, I'm still spinning that around in my head. I apologize. But yeah, I was sick for like a week after that. And it was like, I was coughing. I felt like completely drained of energy. I felt like I couldn't even get out of bed, man. I was sick as a dog.
Wow. Is that a common occurrence when sometimes when people have run-ins with skinwalkers, that they'll become sick like that? Or was that a pretty unique thing?
I think the first two I saw didn't affect me like that.
Sure.
Scared the crap out of me and gave me nightmares. Yeah, but not like made me sick. That third one made me sick. So I don't know. Maybe it was mad it saw me and it cursed me.
True.
I don't know.
Interesting.
The first guy, I gave him the tobacco he wanted, so he didn't curse me. The second guy, I just drove right past him, so
right.
Hopefully he didn't curse me, but no, that third one, it was bad. I mean, by the time I got home, man, I was sick.
Wow. Well, Alex, thank you so much for coming on again. This has been Just a really insightful conversation about skinwalkers with some interesting insights about Sasquatch as well. Thank you so much for coming on, Alex.
You're very welcome.
Become a supporting member of the Bigfoot Society podcast by going to www.patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society and receive extra episodes and early ad-free episodes as well. If you've got a personal Bigfoot encounter you would like to submit for me to share on the podcast, please head on over to www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. There you'll find the Share Your Bigfoot Encounter form a little lower on the page, and please take a minute to share as many details as you can. Please state if the encounter is anonymous or what name you would like associated with the encounter. And as always, thanks for listening.